Good morning. I think we'll get started in the interest of being respectful to your time. So here we are, junior year. Everyone talks about how terrible it is, and so far I think they're right. So we have a great panel this morning to talk about junior year stress. We have Cynthia Rivera, who's head of the guidance department at the high school. Eileen Donnellan, who's our school social worker, and she also serves as the faculty advisor for the Buddies program here at the high school. We have Emma Kate Friedman, who's a teen talk counselor and a representative of Kids in Crisis, who's another high school resource, and then Larry Sullivan, who's our 11th grade principal.
And honestly, I'm here to say hello. You want people who can help you with stress, they're here. I tend to be the one who gives people stress, unfortunately, sometimes. But, no, joking.
This is one reason,
yeah.
Don't ever talk to him.
So.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I think we're going to probably stand up and talk. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. We usually have tables and chairs, and we wander around and talk, so we'll figure out how it is. First of all, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why junior year stress. Why is it so much worse in junior year? And I'm sure you guys can name it as fast as I can name it, but there's so much going on. I think the kids feel for the first time that everything counts, so that makes it harder. They're jumping into, they've been doing things all along, but now they're becoming leaders of things or having greater commitments in their activities than they had before. So they feel responsibility on a different level in many of their activities that they're doing. Often they're also getting their license this year and becoming more independent, so they're not as much a part of the family in the sense of they're drawing away from you, which is developmentally appropriate, but raising their stress levels too. They are testing for SAT prep and doing those things are added into everything that they've always done already. They're often going into higher level classes for the first time, and the workload is that much higher. So we just get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you throw in the colleges, they have to suddenly stop being little kids and start looking forward to their future and what they're doing next. And you know, all of us are trying to help them with this, but we're all adding to that stress too, because we're sort of pushing them along gently or not so gently this year in going into that next phase of their lives. So junior year does, all by itself, without doing anything on our parts, is more stressful for them. And these kids are good kids who worry about those things. They're often really ready to sort of jump to that next level. But it is a very scary process. So we do have to understand that piece of it, that there's a lot going on for them, and they feel everything counts, and so there's a lot of things that they feel they can't do anything about. So we're going to talk today about really the biology behind stress, besides all of these events, and the things that are happening in your homes, and get help from you as to what you're thinking happens, and then we'll offer some suggestions around what to do with that.
And we also want to make this a very interactive presentation, so while we live with teenagers day in and day out, and support and really try to partner with parents as much as we can, we know that you have some probably wonderful ideas of things that you've already done with your children. So one of the nice things about this presentation is also an opportunity for you to share some of the things that may have worked in helping to manage junior year stress. The other thing that Cindy didn't also mention is dating relationships often happen around this time. You know, kids are old enough when they start driving or do things and making decisions about, you know, who they want to be in terms of their relationships. The other thing, in terms of college, they're also thinking about who are they, and in terms of who their parents are and who their siblings are, and how do those values contribute or help color who they want to be.
Okay. Short video here. It was put out a few years ago. Is this Good Morning America or Today Show or something like? Whoops. Yeah. Wait, back up. I do that.
Back at 8:39 with an
Now, volume.
eye-opener for parents and teens. According to a new Princeton Review survey, when it comes to getting into college, students feel learning is actually less important than getting good grades. Katie O'Brien and Hunter Motz are contributors to the Princeton Review and co-authors of The Straight A Conspiracy. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
This is very, very interesting. We'll put our first results up on the board here. 90% of students said getting good grades is important. Okay, I'll buy it.
Good news.
6%, only 6% say they care about whether they're learning.
Absolutely. Well, this is why we were so excited to collaborate with the Princeton Review on this study, is because it takes some of the focus off of just grades and test scores and really onto how are students thinking and feeling on a daily basis.
And I mean, that seems a little bit disturbing to me. So it's like they're sort of results oriented, like they want the good grades, but they don't really care if they learn.
Well, and that's a real problem because that sort of attitude will get you into college, but it really won't get you through college. And what ends up happening is that there's this myth in America that you have to make a choice. Either you can get good grades and be really stressed, or you can have a fun life and get sort of mediocre grades. And parents need to know, and students as well, that it's not a choice. You can really have both. You can have great grades without the stress.
And then finally here, 43% said the college acceptance is what really drove them to get good grades.
100%.
Kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about student stress. We got a next series of stats here. 25% said that homework causes them the most stress. I guess that's not too surprising.
No. And stress is a major factor here for students, and that's no surprise at all. In fact, students reported that they spend 1/3 of their study time just stressing out, which is obviously a ton of wasted time.
Yeah, and the problem is that we now know from science that stress actually shuts down the learning process. So that third of the time that they're stressing out, they're not learning anything. So students need to know that stress can be managed and it's something you can deal with.
I think that is one of the most remarkable results that you have, that a third of the study time is just freaking out, basically.
Yeah.
Exactly. But parents and students should know there are things you can do about it starting tonight. I mean, if you need to get that stress out of the study process, students can do what we like to call an emotional reset. So when you feel that stress starting to come up, take a deep breath, tell yourself this is just an assignment, or I have to do this so my dad lets me use the car, or whatever it takes you to get through it. And then what you can do is just break that assignment down into pieces. If you have 20 calculus problems, just do the first 3 and see where that gets you.
Okay, you mentioned parents. Let's go. We have some results for parents too, and these are also very interesting. So 43% of parents said that they check in about grades regularly, about once a month. 76% of parents said they check in more than that. Surprising?
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, I think the thing that was most powerful about this was the disconnect. You know, in general, parents feel like they're checking in about twice as often as students report that they're checking in. And it's possible that parents are checking in that often. It's just that when the teenager is running through the kitchen and you ask them how their school is going, and they're like, fine, they're only hearing you about half of the time.
Yeah, and there's also another result. 50% of students said that their parents encouraged them to do better, but when we asked the parents said, oh no, 77% said, oh no, I encourage them. So basically, parents think they are more encouraging than the students think they are.
Absolutely, and one of the issues that came up is that parents really want to help. They just don't always feel that they can. And that makes sense, because if you're a parent, you might not have taken Algebra 2 for years and years. But what you can do is say, I don't know how to do this either. That's almost more helpful. And then teach your student how to work their way through it. And if you can't go through the textbook with them, get an academic support system in place, a sibling, a teacher, a tutor. There are online resources, tutors available 24/7. Figure out what that's going to be so you can help your student get through that process.
All right, Katie and Hunter, thank you very much. Some interesting results. Appreciate it.
Good, glad that was over. It's interesting that they said once a month is being a lot for checking in, and I think about Power School and how often parents and students are checking in. But that has created additional stress for kids. When you think about when you were a kid and you only got grades, you know, once a quarter you got a report card, so you had some time if things were not doing well and something to recoup from that. Now they have the constant feedback for themselves when they're looking, but also from parents constantly saying, I saw what happened here, what's that about? Or you know, basing any kind of consequences immediately on things. That becomes an added stress for kids because they're constantly focused on it. And it's been a real problem for our kids here with that ding that they're seeing that their GPA suddenly changed because some teachers put a 0 in because you're late on an assignment. And it has nothing to do with anything. You were out that day, you're going to get it in, there's no real, but it's changed their GPA and added stress for them. So.
And or when Power School is not yet updated, so students have handed in work and parents are saying, but it's not showing on Power School. And so it's that dynamic of trust, which happens with all adolescents, and also relying back on them to be circling back to their teachers and making sure, and sometimes parents will email teachers and say, just checking in to see if this is really completed or not. But that fear that arises in us all of, oh my gosh, what if it's not in? What if they haven't done it? What if they're misrepresenting what we think the reality is, and then what? The bottom's going to fall, and all these, and then you start having all these negative thoughts about what will happen next. So that happens for both parents and students.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a way in Power School, I know it's not just used by Buchanan, correct? It's a
District.
Is there a way to get so Buchanan High School they can only be updated like once a week, so they're not looking at it, so they can't get updates like every time they grade? No, I'm more on a like for the whole school, not just for
That had
one
been
particular
a
child.
discussion, and I think at some point, and Mary could probably speak better to this, Power School was taken down, or was?
Well, we wouldn't allow them to see their GPA, it just, so that all they could look at was the individual courses and what their grades were in on those courses, but the GPA we took off, so they couldn't constantly look at their GPA, and they went insane. They're like, this is terrible. And we had a
We
big
do close access to it at the end of quarters as well, just so teachers can be updating it. Kids aren't constantly going in to see what their grade is at that point.
Any other reactions to the video? What did you think about it?
For me, I just don't like to do homework with my kids. Like, I want them to do it. And they were saying how, get out the book and work, but they're not stressing me out. My parents did not do homework with me. I'm very Don, I'm the opposite of a helicopter parent. So I just wish kids, you could just encourage them and give them good space to do their homework. But I don't like to be responsible for looking it over and checking. I hope that I want my kids to do that. And if they don't, I want them to have the confidence. Really, other than just help them remind what age they are. That's the only thing that's a little, because they were saying you should get in a tutor maybe if it's really needed, but I don't want to have to be a tutor like, oh, that's the right thing.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
that's
want to do
what
that
they were
work in
saying, is
school.
many times you may not be familiar with the content or the curriculum.
Yeah, even if I was.
I think what they meant to say is more of to be an emotional support, to remind
Yes.
them that there are ways of getting through this angst and getting through this anxiety. And I may not be able to help you with the homework, but let's problem solve and let's go through the process of how may you get the information that you need or the support. And we do that a lot with students. Instead of giving them the answer, and as parents, I'm a mom, so I get it. Like when my 10-year-old, has an issue, and our first inclination is to jump in and to help and to fix it. But I think what's most useful is kind of saying, noting what the issue is, and then saying, I wonder how we can get through this. Do you have any ideas? And 9 times out of 10, she knows exactly what she needs to do to get through, and that's empowering to her that she has that capability, and that's her self-confidence and self-esteem is built. And the same thing for adolescents is sometimes because of the way that their brains are developmentally, and we'll talk a little bit about that, they automatically get stuck. And then they feel like, oh my gosh, there's no way out. And so helping them identify a problem-solving approach is really what's in their best interest, because that's what they're going to take with them when they launch from high school.
I think something from the video that I'm sure feels true for you guys too, that I hear about a lot in my office, was the statistic they gave on a third of the time spent studying was really more spent stressing. Like, they referred to it as wasted time. And I'm sure you guys have had that experience too, where your child says, I studied for like 6 hours and I got a 70. Like, I'm so unhappy with my grade. And often that's something I'll be working on with my kids in terms of like, okay, well, it sounds like you really actually only got like 3 hours in. Is 3 hours enough for you? What do we need to do to help make that time more effective? Can we take breaks? Are there certain times of day that we figured out are better for you? If we're staying up till 10 studying after you've been at practice all day, are you a little too tired maybe to focus on this material as intensely as you'd like to? But re-examining study skills can often help in terms of reducing stress as well.
And if
Phone out your room.
Also that.
It has been a game changer. I mean, I've been in this field for many years, and it really has been a game changer in terms of, if you look at our own use of cell phones and how it's just but, and that's why we're getting really good feedback from students about their ability to focus in the classroom when their phones are in a cubby. Teachers are seeing much more positive response, engagement between the students.
I find it worrying that we have 3 hours of homework tonight. I mean, these kids have been in school for 6-7 hours a day. They most likely do sports or other activities or work or do something. And then to have 3 hours of homework on top of it, I mean, that's a total scheduled day of 13, 14 hours, which for, in my opinion, a developing brain is not ideal. They need to have some downtime, and I think that's contributing to the stress. I mean,
and that is something that we as a faculty and administration are, are looking at in terms of making sure that students have time for downtime, for family time, for things that bring them joy, sports, the play, clubs, and not just academics all day. So that is something that we're trying to be more mindful about. I think so we can talk a little bit better to this in terms of the level of classes. If it's a stretch for your child to be in a certain level of class, the emotional energy and the time spent on those academics is going to be greater than somebody that may be a little bit more suited to that level of class. And so that's where the balance comes in really making sure that the fit for them is the right one.
And our goal is for every student to do, on average, 2 hours of homework a night. So on average, it's a big one. And helping kids chunk their assignments. They might get an assignment, it's not due for 2 weeks, and of course, they don't look at it until 2 days ahead of time, and then going crazy. So a lot of that is also helping your child to chunk how do they chunk, and that's what we do a lot too when we see grades going down or things, or the kids not working, they're feeling stressed. How are you managing it? If they want to complain about a teacher, they gave us all this work. When did they give it to you? What did you do leading up to the assignment? So as just to help them learn how to spread things out to make it less stressful. Because of course the cramming thing is the worst.
Do they teach that in school as well, that chunking, they teach kids that as well?
Yeah.
I do think that's where you get the 3 hours of homework. They didn't do stuff that they should have been doing slow.
Sure. Because they're busy and they're tired and they want to take get sleep once in a while.
So many teachers incorporate all of those executive functioning skills, organizing, being able to identify what you need to do, being able to map out what is the time it will take to do this assignment, how are you going to accomplish it given all of the other things in your life, making sure, I know within Connections, it's something that I was so elated to hear. I have a juniors Connections class. And one of the things that has come about as part of some of the training that we're doing for emotional intelligence is the students had to write goals this past week, and all of the students wrote how they were going to map out having fun, doing things that brought them joy, and making sure that they were incorporating that into their days as opposed to work. And that's what we all know. If we just work, it's you lose joy in life, and it's important to also have time to build and foster the relationships that you have.
So now that we've done our presentation
Backwards, I'm sorry. So we all know what stress is. It's the body's response to a perceived challenge. It results in the release of adrenaline and cortisol. It allows us to react quickly to danger. And stress results in the fight, flight, or freeze response. There's a really great article that I just got this morning. It's a great website called Hey Sigmund. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but it was about anxiety. And one of the things that they talked about is that anxiety is often shows up as a reaction to something important in terms of life, such as an exam, a performance. I know we talk a lot about public speaking, presentations that students have to do. That causes angst. Trying something new, meeting new people, and it's also an opportunity to develop a sense of courage and taking a healthy risk and doing something outside of your comfort zone, which is hard for adolescents to do. And I think that's why sometimes one of the things that we like to do, and it's important for parents to do, is to help them know it's okay to take those risks. And if the end result isn't what you expected, that's where the learning comes in. The adolescent brains and stress. Stress is triggered more easily in adolescence because, of course, we know the frontal lobe is not fully developed until the age of 24 to 25, and I think the research shows that's even going up to into the 27 mark. The last connections can be made in the brain are between the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that is the problem solving, judgment, rational thinking, executive functioning skills, all of those things, the organization, and the limbic system, which is the emotional center. So they really can't think well when they're stressed.
Is that the same between boys and girls?
Boys, actually, their prefrontal cortex develop later than girls. Right. Yeah. And one of the things that I think it's important for teenagers, because a lot of times they're like, why am I like this? Why am I so emotional? Why do I feel these feelings so intensely? And one of the analogies that we learned was flipping their leg. So if you pretend this is your prefrontal cortex, this is your spinal cord, this is your limbic system, which controls all the emotional regulation. What happens is when there's fear, up your spinal cord shoots that flight or fight response. You flip your leg, and now the part of your brain that controls the rational thinking, decision-making, memory, learning is no longer accessible because the emotional part takes over. And it's actually what happens, so there's a reason why they say you flipped your leg and you can no longer think straight.
And with kids who already don't have that part of their brain fully developed, it gets flipped much easier.
So some of the symptoms that I'm sure you see with your kids when they're stressed. They're tired, they're anxious, their sleep patterns are disrupted, they're eating terribly, probably. They're irritable, they get angry, and you tend to probably be the first place that they get angry with. You're the safe people for that. They feel overwhelmed, they procrastinate. You're going to see this so much in the college process going forward that the ones who aren't ready, or the ones, a lot of them freeze, they can't move on it. You're ready to go, you're ready to get planning and start taking trips, and they're like, ah. So some kids, that's what they do, they totally freeze, they cannot move forward, and they rather put it off because they're so afraid of those results. And it's really important to understand that this is part of this anxiety. You get some somatic symptoms like headache and digestion issues, they're in the nurse a lot, calling to come home, they're not feeling well, easily crying, difficulty concentrating at withdrawal. We see an awful lot of that, and it seems to grow, certainly heightens freshman year when they come in, and then junior year when we get started on this. We want it, and we keep talking to them about this being a really great adventure, and let the process take that where it takes them, but they often can't get rid of it. But there's good stress and bad stress. You can't get rid of all stress. Stress is important for moving forward in life. A lot of kids and a lot of people, things wouldn't happen if you didn't have a deadline, if you didn't have to rise up and meet a challenge. So we have to really look at what's manageable for adolescents. And we do see it that this is what makes them more productive, which this is the practice for them becoming adults and becoming resilient, that by doing a lot of this, you can't avoid it, you've got to get through it. Oftentimes you can't or shouldn't be fixing it for them. You have to teach them, as I was saying, how to fix it themselves. What are the steps to get through something that's stressful, and then they learn from it and become less stressed because they now have some confidence that they're going to be able to manage this on their own. And this is the most essential part of junior and senior year, that they are starting to learn that they can manage it, and they can do it, because they're going to be going off and doing it on their own very soon. And sometimes walking through it is a really great life lesson, and them understanding that they can do it is very important.
So I think it's similar to what they were saying in the video, is the learning, the teaching, the discrete teaching of the skill, as well as practicing the skill. It develops them interpersonally. similar to when you go into a class. Academically, you're getting taught a discrete skill, and then you're asked to practice that skill or put it into, to apply it. Interpersonally, that's what we're trying to say stress can also do. And I think the joy in that, and what's so wonderful to witness, is that sometimes where there are mistakes made and when there is failure, the greatest life lessons happen. And students are able to make decisions differently next time. And I think if we always, somebody brought up an analogy of like a curling parent, who smooths the way of everything and never has a child that that will develop that sense of like, I can do it on my own. I actually can deal with this. And how that builds their interpersonal skills that are so important for the next stages of life.
And that's very hard to do when you're thinking junior year grades count, everything, every little thing is going to impact them in some way. And for kids to feel that, well, I can't have any failures right now. It's not in the cards. Yes, they can. It will be okay. And most of the failures they're doing now are not catastrophic. They're little things. It's a test. Might bump their grade down a bit, but it's not going to overall change the trajectory of where they're going and what they're doing. And they need to know that always, that every little test is not the end of their life as they have planned it. That is one little thing. And then, of course, there's bad stress. When it becomes, as we said before, overwhelms the system. You can't think and plan. They're doing the avoid, they're fighting, and very negative physical and health.
So stress and learning, as we all know, it impacts ability to concentrate, efficiency in terms of processing information, being able to think about things clearly and linearly, and also memory. So we talked about flipping the lid and how they're not able to access when they're in an emotional state of stress or anxiety. They're not able to access the rational part of the brain that makes decisions and/or has all the information stored in it when they're studying for tests and learning.
I think they said that already.
So long-term effects, we have to be careful because continued long-term stress affects the body in physical ways such as the cortisol levels, physical symptoms. I've had people talk about the impact on the immune system, depression and anxiety, which can get to a clinical mental health level. Use of substances as a method to relieve stress. As we know, adolescence is also a time of figuring out ways in which they're going to manage and deal with the stresses that come up. And use of substances is one thing. Problems with memory and concentration that affects learning as well.
Okay, so just use them tables, so you don't have tables today, but if you just talk amongst yourself to each other for 1 minute about what you see at home in terms of what causes stress in your child's life. Is there anything else? And then we could discuss that. So, is there anything different? Is there anything we didn't talk about yet?
Okay, I'm gonna be a little rough. I'm gonna give you a little spot. Anybody want to share out? You can just initial reaction.
It's a balance between how do you be
engaged and try to help them without making them feel like you're on top of them all the time. You know, like for example, you know, you said the power stroke thing. So when you see, you know, oh, your grade or whatever has gone down to 70, and you talk about that, you know, trying to do that, you know, how do you do that in a way that doesn't offend them? Oh, it's not offend them, but make it seem like you don't trust them, you don't have their achievement, you know, how do you do it in a positive way?
Right. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we use in the counseling setting is noting things. I'm noting that there's some things in here. Can you help me understand that? Or I wonder, I'm just wondering, I see that there's a couple things. I know you work really hard. How's it going? You know, so it's not what's going on here. It's not in an accusatory way and validating, you know, that sometimes things are hard. But it is.
Coming through and he's like, oh yeah, I wasn't in on Friday morning, I thought that. And he didn't come in for a class, so he missed a test, so she put a 0 and I said, well, what do you think you should do? I'm going to go email her right now. Yeah. So that went okay, but sometimes it doesn't go.
Yeah. And that's where, again, the life lessons happen. Anybody else?
My house is screen time, so they were finding a way, we were monitoring everything and looking at their phone, and they were finding a way to like get that kind of realizing, so we caught like ordering stuff, and we have a witching hour in our house where they obviously, and they don't realize how much screen time, they're in shock, but when we show them actually where they spend their time, and now we can monitor what time they go on to these things.
Right.
And once we showed them, they were just like, got my impression that in my video, just like, oh my god. And then we were like, well, maybe you're not shutting the app down. They were completely screwed. Did everyone hear that?
And we hear a lot of that. Screen time, how the perception of use of screen time, if you were to ask adolescents, is so much lower than what we know they're actually doing, how much time they're actually spending. And that does impact homework completion. It does impact because that distractibility, and that's how their brains are wired right now, is to jump from one thing to another and to lose focus.
For us, because it's like, then they're like, well, are you watching everything we do? And then, you know, where's the trust? And
Right.
so you have that battle with them, and it's just like, it's not that we don't trust you, but like, you've got to make smarter decisions on, if you want to watch Netflix, then fine, watch Netflix for 30 minutes, take a break, but then go back to your work. Like, I'm all for taking breaks, but like,
If you can't shift back, that's a problem.
they have to be able to, they have to monitor it and to be able to make decisions.
And that's part of being more self-aware and developing, because, and I know, you know, there's a lot of information at the university level of apps that college students use specifically to turn off Facebook and all of the social media sites so that they can concentrate on just those. And we really, I mean, that is part of the conversation too, with the incorporation of technology in the classroom and teaching kids to be more self-aware of the impact of that on their productivity. Yes. College Info Geek. I can get it for you. It's a really good one, and they have all kinds of music for studying and apps that you can use to turn those things off. Our technology people are much better than I am. But there's a lot. I think it's College Geek Info or something like that. But I can make sure I get the link. Yeah.
We'll add it to our resources when we have this online, so that would be good.
And Ukrainian Cares did a wonderful presentation a couple of years ago on technology and parenting, and one of the things they talked about is I know it's kind of junior year, but starting early and really teaching your children about the value of using technology and what your family values are, not only for academics and productivity, but also what they're watching. It's a free-for-all once they get on, and for younger kids, not having them have the password and coming up with family contracts about this is a privilege, it's not a right, but it's hard the older that they get. Any other stressors that you can think of?
They say 6% of kids don't really care about learning. I mean, that's just a teenage
The process of learning.
Oh,
So
it's the
the process of learning, I think, is what they're talking about. So they think coming in, sitting in a class, being present, doing things rotely, memorizing, that's not really getting involved in the learning. It's more, it's not being available to the learning or finding joy in the learning. I think that's what they were talking about, is really becoming passionate. And that's why I think our school is wonderful in making sure that when they're educating, they're using multiple modalities in which they teach. So a lot of group work, some projects, they do acting. So making sure that kids are really joyful about the learning process, as opposed to just feeling like they're standing up in front of a lecture and being dictated to, which is hard for adolescents.
It's also because they feel they don't have any choice in courses they're taking. And so they're just going through the motion, the grades become all encompassing, and they're not enjoying the process going through. And that's where teachers get frustrated, is like, stop worrying about your grades, listen to what I'm saying. We want you to have the bigger picture and understanding that. And I do see with seniors, where we give them so much more choice as to what courses they're taking, that they often coming to that point then saying, I really love my classes this year. It's really much more focused in the direction I'm going, and they're choosing courses that way, in a way, still at the levels that are appropriate to them, but a little more focused towards a goal for them in their interests. And you see kids more engaged, being almost surprised that, gee, this is really a good class, I'm enjoying it. So.
Do you think seniors might enjoy it more because they also have SATs behind them, and
Yes.
colleges possibly know that? So
The
they can
applications
just-
start to, you get through this first month, 2 months, like, but it was that kind of a feeling of November 1st, and then, and everybody took a deep breath.
But again, through that stress was a sense of accomplishment. We can do it. We did it. There's sense of accomplishment, of confidence about.
Good to stress too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then keep that going until those applications are in, and then they last. And hopefully not too much. We don't like the senioritis coming in, but they do stop and just enjoy the classes for a little while.
Or to Ms. Donovan's point, figure out, okay, how can I prioritize myself and my self-care? What are some things I can do for myself and over this hurdle and can kind of refocus a little bit?
You talked about like ramping up the level. So the thing that I've noticed with both of my daughters is that as soon as that level is ramped up, they tend to forget their study strategies, and they see that, okay, I've got 4 chapters to memorize, and they can't break down each chapter. They see it as, and then that 30% or whatever of procrastination and stressing out is because they don't break that down and say, okay, I can do this chapter now, I can do another chapter. And that's what I found, is like getting them some study skills and some strategies to break that down. For me, it's been, I did it for my older daughter over the summer, and it was the best thing that I ever did, because she, like when I see that she's getting stressed about something, I'm like, okay, did you break it down? Did you map out? And then she's like, no, I forgot. Like they tend to like forget, they sometimes go back to their old ways.
Right.
Because part of what you're teaching in that is that it's manageable.
Right.
That it may be stressful, but you got this.
But they see the
And
big
it's
picture,
manageable.
that's what they stress about.
Yeah.
It's like,
Did you? Yeah.
Just a question. You mentioned the joy of learning, and while that certainly is admirable, practically everything that I see is metric driven, from the state examinations to what college they're going to get in. Every single university and college, they're looking at the numbers. And how do you balance the need to have a joy in learning with the need to, pull 90s and higher?
Well, I think, the point is during this search process is that you have a range of schools where it matches your child's profile. If your child is getting 80s and you're shooting for schools that you can see on Naviance that only take 98 averages, you're increasing the stress of your child by even suggesting that they apply to schools that they have probably no shot at getting into. That is a very stressful thing for kids who feel like they're filling out an application that is worthless. They're spending the time to do that based on metrics that, we understand it is the numbers. Colleges do have average GPAs. They have, the top schools in the country, they're not going to look at the application at a certain level because they have too many kids to already, they've got, 70,000 applications they're going to look at. Why are they going to look at your child who is well below their lowest part of their average? So I think managing expectations so the numbers don't become so important every step of the way helps in that. You prepare, you do the best you can on SATs and ACTs, but by the end of junior year, you pretty much know the child you have. This is the applicant is at that point, the end of junior year. So it's kind of a harsh reality, but it's a reality. And I think, having kids go for those dream schools of theirs when there's no reality in it, allow that to happen for 2 schools. Don't allow that to happen for 8 schools on the list. It's like, okay, pick 2 that are like that. Go for it. We do everything we can to apply to those schools. But let's make sure you really love the other schools on your list as well. And that we all are pretty comfortable that you're going to get in there. So the kids then fill out the application. They know their scores are strong. They know their GPA is strong from that school. And they'll feel good and they'll get a good answer. And that's part of just the reality that's hitting them, I think. And I think part of it, all the way along, we've always said to kids, work hard, do your best, you'll get everything you ever wanted in life. But it's not really the reality, unfortunately. And how do we say that without crushing them? How do we say that with it? But we want to show them the reality of what it is to get into each one of these schools. And it is what it is at the end of the junior year. Let's accept who you are. Let's celebrate who you are. You're fantastic in all these other ways, and you're going to have a fantastic college experience, but let's choose appropriately. Does it make sense?
How much do you help them understand that although this feels to them like, they're making a decision that's going to, define them for the rest of their life, that's not really the reality either.
Right.
Because tons of kids go to one school, discover that isn't actually a great fit for them, and move to another one.
Yeah.
Some kids aren't ready to go to college when they, graduate from high
That's
school.
part of all the conversations we have in junior year. And starting in December with your students, we're meeting with them in connections groups and talking about that. Finding schools that fit who you are, and you're going to be, don't just go with the most challenging schools that are out there for you. Look at every part and every characteristic, because they'll realize as soon as they get on campus, if they fit well with that campus, they'll rise to the highest levels. And if all the qualities that you're looking for in a school are there, it'll work out for them. So.
Your question is a good one.
It's the pressure of like, this is not going to define the rest of your life. Because right now I feel that that's what the juniors are thinking, is if I make the wrong, if I take one misstep, as you were saying, or make the wrong choice here, then that's it, I'm totally screwed over.
So how do we model, yes, this is a big decision.
But it's not the only
decision.
one, and it isn't going to define you as an adult or the rest of your either academic or professional life, because people switch lanes all the time.
Just with my older son, I did say, it feels like it's the end goal, like this is it. And I was just like, it's just kind of going to be the beginning. It's just one and I think like just to kind of, and I also said before he even sent anything in, I said, if it doesn't work out, you can always transfer. Like before he even applied, just so that, it's not the last thing you're going to make. There's a lot of choices and decisions, and just because you feel for them. And I didn't even realize how stressed my older son is until he literally lifted me up, after he got a score on an exam, on us. And it felt terrible in a way, just to realize, oh my gosh, he's really been having so much pressure. So,
I think those messages come from so many different places. I think that as parents, again, we want want the best for our children, and so what we try to have them aspire to are good things. And sometimes doing good things or achieving in a certain way then translates into self-worth. And we have to be really careful not to equate where you go or how you achieve in school or what classes you're in equal to your self-worth and or your ability to be successful. Because as we know, going through life, sometimes people find success in many different ways. And it's really about thinking about what's right for them versus what may be right for the masses.
And to your point, sir, making sure that the metrics aren't dictating the educational experience and the enjoyment in learning in this process.
And we talk about this in our own language in how we communicate to kids, like when they get a score on a test, that's great, but how often do you say, but you could have done this? That's great, but how often? Listen to yourself. I do it, and I've done it often, and I see it in my friends with their kids, where you're happy for them, but there's always that caveat of what they could have done, which deflates them, which makes them feel they're not good enough. So even our language, simple little messages that we give out, very, very important to hear yourself, how often you do that. And in the college process, it comes up a lot, and I had a daughter told all the time that
it comes across as a lot less defensive.
Or if you ask them a question, that's great. Do you think, how was your experience? Do you think, you prepared well enough for that? Do you think, you studied the right amount? And try and get feedback that way rather than but what could you have
You could have done this differently.
And
it's human nature for parents. I do it. I play softball sometimes. How do you think you did? What do you think you could have done better? Instead of just, it's human nature as opposed to saying, wow, did you have a really good time? I loved what you did. And so it's human nature to do that, but being more mindful of that and the messages that we're sending and what we're doing ourselves and what we're telling them we want of them are important.
Yeah, just on that, I just think, I constantly hear myself up and down, like just do your best and all that type of thing, and then at the same time, oh my God, you got what grade? And so you're finding, you're catching yourself, but it is so human, but at the same time, you're adding stress, as a parent, and then you're trying to say the exact opposite, and they see you being a little bit hypocritical because you're struggling yourself to try to keep it calm, But this random one, my daughter is constantly hitting me up right now with, we need to spend a lot of money getting a college counselor. And I'm like, what is that? I never had that. My friend spent $10,000 having a college counselor. I'm like, I know that's taboo to even say, but I'm like, I know it's the whole thing. Don't even talk to other people, your junior year kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I'm like,
we survey the seniors every year at the end of the year. Did you use a college counselor? What did you use it for?
Yeah.
And we ask them every year, how many of you? And it never rises more than maybe 25%. And often that was to just look at my essay, to just help me with SAT prep, was a tutor that was sort of an educational person. So I think it's not as widespread, or maybe the kids are totally lying to us, but we try to track that. And because oftentimes, sometimes the messages are contradictory to what we've been telling the kids, or they don't match with the statistics. They're telling kids to apply to schools where we say, it's a bit of a reach for you. So, it happens. I don't think it happens as much as kids think it happens or parents think.
And that's what the advisors are for. They can go in and meet with them and have
fabulous.
And I just want to be respectful of people's time. I know we typically get stuck on this line. So if we could just move forward, and we may get to some of what.
One more question.
Yeah, follow up on that question, or comment rather. Have you followed whether there's any effectiveness in doing it? I mean, is it $10,000 down the sink? Or is it, does
you're
it
asking
really
someone
take
who
people
feels
who
like
are
they
on
do
the
a
edge
good
of
job.
I think for the kids, for some kids who you're having trouble connecting with them, to getting them to sit down, or they have problems, with focus and organization and having someone that can keep you on track. probably works better. But if your child is already an organized person, or if you're an organized person who are ready to dive into the process with them, that's mine. But there are some things out there, but not sure. I just hit the turn. No, for that one.
Yes, so these are some of the things that kids have told us make them feel stressed. I know we touched on a lot of these just now, but I wonder if this will facilitate some more discussion too. I bet a lot of you can relate to the perceived parental expectations and parental stress. I can't tell you how often one of my kids will say, well, my parents expect me to have this GPA, or they'll be so disappointed if I don't have all A's. And then, of course, when I connect with the parent, it's, I've never said that. I really don't think I've ever given them that message, and I think it's the kids put so much pressure on themselves already, especially in a really high-performing school community, to perform at a certain level. They have really high expectations for themselves. And then I mix in some of these other things, like feeling, maybe not always being overscheduled, but feeling overscheduled, feeling like they haven't earned an opportunity to sit down and maybe practice some self-care, prioritize what work absolutely has to be done tonight versus what can I do during my free tomorrow so that I can have a little bit of Netflix time, or spend some time with family and friends. And of course, right now, their social lives and their social perceptions are so important. It's developmentally appropriate that their social lives are the most important thing to them right now. And it is an important part of development. We're social beings. We need that social time. But sometimes it can maybe take priority over getting work done, and then we've gone down a slippery slope and created some more stress. So it's often not one of these things in a vacuum. It's how they're playing on each other. But the kids are able to recognize and identify them as well. These ring true for anybody?
So one of the things, I don't know if anybody's heard of Sumi Luther. She does a lot of research on stress and anxiety in affluent communities. And one of the things that, and one of the articles also is a Washington Post article that talked about children of affluent communities and finding higher levels of anxiety than inner city girls, that girls are 3 times more likely to be depressed, experience depression, anxiety, or have substance abuse issues. Perfectionism is something that we see often, and that comes into, we talked a little bit about, not wanting to fail, not wanting to disappoint, not wanting to make a mistake, and that's something that is part of the adolescent process normally. What strategies have you used to help your kids with stress in the moment?
Yeah, I think we're losing a time that maybe we can just talk amongst ourselves, like talk to it,
Anybody have, you've talked already about some really good strategies, but anything that we haven't addressed that you could think of things that that you do to kind of help your students decompress?
Hug them.
I think, the basics, I think to have dinners together at night and we try to have nice conversation, not just talk about sports and, school. We try to do things on the weekends that like the kids are like, I don't want to go anymore. Like, let's go for a fall walk. Let's go to Pound Ridge Reservation, take a hike together, even if it's for 1 hour. I think it's so nice to see them without their phones. They're having a good time, and we drag them out. So like, but just little family outings and things to do. I feel like it's just like an hour of
Connecting.
Yeah, we love the conversation cards that my kids love, and every once in a while, we'll pull them out, and it really brings up like some funny conversation, because otherwise it always ends up going right back to like how their soccer game was, homework, whatever. So it's just nice to have like the family time. I think is just important. I think it's so essential.
And those human connections, what we know in research, are part of what builds happiness and joy.
Yeah.
And there's research that ties those human connections.
It could be just, pancakes on Saturday morning, like just that they can look forward to. That's maybe just a half hour or a short time, but everyone comes together. I think those are huge pieces that people feel that they enjoy that, and certainly the memories they take with them each time. And knowing that you care about all other things.
Right, there is something else other than schoolwork.
Yeah.
There is another life.
And there's a way out of stress.
Right.
You know, that you're modeling that, you know, let's be playful, let's have fun, let's, you know, do something that you may not want to do, but when you do it, you'll then recognize the benefits of it. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody play games? We're a big game family. And I
It's
know
just
even
all
if
that
we're-
takes work. Like, that's the important thing. It's not taken personally. My kids don't want anything to do with me or games or any of that. But every now and then, when you kind of force it a little, it's just remember you're going to usually have to work at it if your kids are all into their social role groups and they have a car.
Yeah.
It takes work. Don't take it personally and just try to make it happen, even though it takes work and they don't want to be there. Because they do really, games are a no-brainer, but it's so much work for me to get a game going. But if I do, it's wonderful.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, there's huge resistance to that in our house too. I keep trying that. It's easier if you can get another family involved, because then
they feel
certainly in my
like you can
household it's
pull
like,
it.
then it's like, oh well, it will be fun because I'm not just you.
Accessible.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I love this slide. This is one of my favorite slides. So these are just some ways people have talked about slowing down, keeping calm, being positive. We, as human nature, again, we have a tendency to focus on the negative. And so just being more mindful of like, okay, so I'm feeling negative right now, what's the positive in it? Taking it easy, decompressing, unplugging, especially from social media and technology, things that cause stress. Enjoying life, having fun, breathing. I know it sounds trivial, but the breath has a lot to do with wellness. And learning how to breathe accurately and efficiently is really important. Relaxing, going outside. There's also tons of research that shows being outside and doing things in nature is a stress reliever. And then meditating. The other thing that we talked a little bit about is giving students permission to ask for help from teachers or others, modeling for them that we don't always have the answers to things and that we do have to seek others for help, breaking large projects into smaller parts, which is what we talked about, breathing, developing a stress management technique, and also having that balance of limiting things that bring you joy or building in things that bring you joy as opposed to the things that overscheduling students and not getting enough sleep, especially.
And I do want to, on this one, it's okay for them to quit something. If they've been doing something and you're thinking, well, you want to show that commitment all 4 years, not if they're not enjoying it anymore. If there's something that is bringing them joy for 4 years, that's great. The activities that kids do are one of the least important things on a college application. And so it's great that they do things and they should do something, be active and have things, but if something is pure drudgery, you're adding to the stress and it's not that important. And really allow them to quit something once in a while. It's okay. And I think they don't feel like they can, and that's a really important thing. If you're seeing it at home, talk to your child's counselor and just get a sense. If it's the only thing they do, maybe we might say, let's find something else for them to do. Come junior year, a lot of kids quit things and take a job and love that because they really hate it or they didn't make the varsity team in junior year. So they don't want to be on JV anymore. They don't want to do that. They're not enjoying it. So let's look at something else. It's okay. And I think that's a myth out there that oftentimes people say you got to stick with it or don't do it just for the resume kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I say it's got to bring you joy as well. Yeah, yeah, and it just will really make them more authentic in who they are when they get ready to actually talk to colleges about who they are. If they can really have had some of those decisions and made some of those choices.
So as we've talked about before, positive relationships and communication are the largest protective factors against stress and anxiety. Unplugging, we talked about connecting before you correct, after you empathize and they are calm, because nothing good comes out of not being calm. Identify causes of stress and problem solve for them, not with them. We talked about the really important thing is also to be mindful of your own stress levels. You know, that's hard to do, but I think that's where sometimes the breakdowns in communications happen. So it's important to do, and having a positive mindset about stress, that it is not necessarily always a harmful thing, it can be a good thing as well. It's also important, research shows us a 3-to-1 ratio of positive to negative emotion builds resilience. Important to see the positive in stress as a motivator. There's a lot of research, and this is a really good, this will be online, a really good demonstration of how having those connections with people and building in gratitude can lead to happiness, the research that's on that. Using strengths to address obstacles and making sure that you're identifying students' strengths as well as the things that may be challenging to them. Being mindful of having fun, connecting with their peers so that they can get through tough issues, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. That's a no-brainer. What we do at New Canaan High School.
Yeah, so have you heard about the emotional intelligence things we're doing around here at the school with the kids? It's happening in our connections class where we're both the faculty's being trained and the students are being trained on a lot of these things that we've been talking about. Kids are using those strategies more and more, and that's a good thing. Teaching them how to deal with some stressors and doing a lot of that mindfulness and calming kinds of things, and being able to name and label what they're thinking and feeling at a certain time so that teachers are understanding where they're coming from if they're having a tough day. And you will see teachers being very flexible when kids they can read a class and say, this class is not ready today. And not every teacher, but a lot of teachers will do that. So.
And just for anyone who doesn't know what Connections is every 2 weeks your child is involved in a small group with a faculty person. And that faculty person keeps their Connections group all 4 years. So it's really an opportunity to make sure every student in the building has a relationship with an adult. Somebody that they can go to if they're experiencing hardships or stress. But it's really also a playful time for them to just decompress during the day, and it's built into the schedule.
So certainly, activities are important if it's something that they enjoy. And sports are great outlets. A lot of kids feel they would not do a sport. It's important to them. And that's their social life, and that's their group, and those are their families in a lot of ways. So I would never take that away from them. And then of course all these resources here at the high school if you need us for any of these. You've got 3 representatives here with the counselor, social worker, the outreach worker, and we have psychologists, the nurses. Certainly all would be available if there were bigger than normal concerns, what you view as normal concerns. Because if it's not any of the strategies that you're using at home, if you're seeing your child really shutting down, it's important for us to know.
The one that I love the best is partnering with parents. It takes a village. We can't do our jobs without partnering with you and vice versa. So that's really important. So this is Mark Brackett is somebody who is from Yale and has trained many of our faculty, and part of his emotional intelligence work is being rolled out this year with the students, and last year was with faculty.
And as they settle back into the classrooms, many of them have also packed up and are bringing with them a lot of emotion.
Increasingly focusing on their emotional development. ABC's Deb Roberts is here now. She sat down with education guru Mark Brackett to learn more about his new program, helping kids understand their emotions and others. And Deb, this is not only good for kids, it's also good for their parents.
That's exactly right, Tom. You have kids who are heading into school. I do too. And as they settle back into the classrooms, many of them have also packed up and are bringing with them a lot of emotional stuff. Studies show that 3/4 of kids report being tired, bored, or stressed, but many are now getting a handle on their lives because they're getting permission to feel.
Thousands of school kids around the country say they're in a better mood these days thanks to an increasingly popular program getting them to think more about their feelings.
What are the biggest mistakes we're making? from day to day in dealing with our feelings?
Ignoring them, suppressing them, denying them.
Mark Brackett, director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and author of a new book, Permission to Feel, says so many of us are burdened by stress and anxiety because we don't talk about our emotions.
Feelings are information. They are important for our decisions, they're important for our relationships, our health, our everyday performance. And when we acknowledge them and use them wisely, great things happen.
And he says kids are paying the steepest price. Research showing that American teens lead the world in violence, binge drinking, marijuana use, and obesity, with stress levels off the charts. More than half of college students are coping with anxiety, a third of them depression.
When you think about the world, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety, and talking about our feelings will help that?
It will, because as we say, you have to name it to tame it.
We're going to list the 5 words that were most common at our table.
That's why Hinsdale High School outside Chicago has implemented Brackett's Ruler program as an integral part of its freshman curriculum.
The ruler are the 5 skills of emotional intelligence. Recognizing emotions in oneself, understanding the causes and consequences, labeling those feelings, learning how to express those feelings, and the top of the hierarchy is that regulation skill.
The schools use color-coded language to help kids explain their mindset on a given day. Red if they're anxious or upset, blue if they're down, yellow means they're happy.
Included? Do you guys want to feel included at Hinsdale South? We want to be able to, them to say, like, hey, Mrs. Parker, I just came in. I just want you to know I'm red, and I'm going to go use some of my strategies right now. That's what we're doing here. We're lowering shame.
At first, it just didn't seem like I would use it every day. Every decision I make, I use it.
It helps me be stronger, so now I feel a lot more confident.
It'll let me put myself in someone else's shoes and realize that me being wrong is okay.
These are just life skills that you need to know.
Even parents noticing the difference.
Seeing that she can come home and, open up.
My kids actually now ask me how I'm feeling and what they can do to make my day better, and it's just that life learning lesson that they don't get from a book in a regular classroom.
And that is key, Dr. Brackett says, getting adults involved in the conversation. Checking in, Tom, so I'll have to ask you, how are you feeling?
I feel good, but it's early, right? But what this doctor says is so right. Once you name it, you can tame it. So how do you do it after that?
Well, he says what's key is once you know what you're feeling, it's all about those strategies to help you deal with it. For instance, maybe deep breathing to kind of take you down if you're feeling a little too tense. Visualizing yourself in a better place. That makes a big difference. And practicing a positive point of view. Sounds very simple, but all of those things lead you to check in and sort of calm yourself. And he says it makes a huge difference. In schools across the country, they're seeing a big, big difference.
And as parents, it's just taking the time to stop and say, how do you feel?
Exactly.
So easy. All right, Deb, thanks so much.
In today's Tech Bites, a facial recognition program that can detect your emotions.
Amazon sells the service to police agencies. It can identify 8 emotions, including fear.
Any reactions or?
That's where we have connections because that's
Connections, that's where it's been rolled out.
It's been running for years, but not this. Now we're looking at emotional intelligence. In the past, we've done a lot around stress and other things for kids to have a place to do activities, and some teachers choose not to do the activities and just have a place for kids to have something that's not graded in their life, not judged in their life.
Like, a lot of the kids, what I've sensed is that they think that their first degree, their undergrad, is like the end game. And we had a family friend that, honestly, it was 10 minutes of a conversation with my daughter. It was like, she's a big-time lawyer in the city, and she's like, honestly, your undergrad is not important. She said, wherever you go, you need to go where you can be successful. It's not about getting into the best college you can get into, because you may get in and then you may not be successful. It's about finding the right fit, being successful there, so then you can then go on if you wanted to attend a better college. She said, but so my point is, do you ever have people coming in from industry to tell them that their perspective on that sometimes the undergraduate is not the be-all and end-all to their perspective? Because I feel that's where they keep like talking amongst themselves, that we want to go here, we want to go there. It's like, and that brings a sense of failure if they're not there, and it's not the end game.
Right.
So if you can change the perspective.
I think certainly in our career night, we have a really fabulous career night, and a lot of those people are so successful or high up in their industries can all talk to where they started, and often it's nowhere that they would have guessed.
Right, exactly.
Of how they got there. I think, and I'm not even sure kids are going to college thinking about what career they want to go, like being successful in life. I think they're not able to look beyond that. They're looking at where's everyone else going and what will look good, and so I will feel proud, and my parents will feel proud of where I'm going. And that's more the journey we take with them in terms of understanding that, to try to put that aside, that to really look at schools, you know, all the things we've done in the last couple of years in terms of them understanding who they are and their strengths and what does this mean for a major or a career, and what colleges to look at, and getting them out on campuses when they start to look at campuses and see kids who they weren't expecting to see at those schools can broaden their viewpoint and your viewpoint as to schools that might be appropriate for your child. So it starts to fall away as the college search process gets underway. So it's pretty interesting what they come back and talk to us about. But it is a hard message at this age for them to talk about.
And then here's just a few references, and we do have a couple of articles, which I mentioned before, that are on the table that I think are worthy of reading.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone's interested, I don't know if anybody was able to make it to the Christine Young presentation. Yes. And the afternoon one was rescheduled. It is happening this month. So if you go on the CARES website, you can see when she's coming back. If you missed it, it's really good, really worth going to. Junior year is not too late to see her present. She talks in more detail about what Dawn was talking about with adolescent brain development, how, you know, what sort of arguments and behaviors they need to anticipate, because if we're prepared for it, it won't feel like a crisis. And then if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the effects that social media and our phones have on our brains and how they were developed to become addictive, there's a really quick, really well done, it's about a 40-minute documentary called Like. And a couple of my kids have seen it, and they've actually said they found it really empowering because they got more insight into, oh, this device, for example, was developed to hook me in, so I can get my information. Kids don't like that. They don't want, you know, the man to get away with using their information. So if you're noticing in your household that maybe screens are running rampant, it might be a good tool to try to use, or even just to educate yourself.
It's called Like.
L-I-K.
Like when you like it on
Facebook.
Oh,
on Facebook.
And is Christine the one from Greenwich?
Yes.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. Did she speak yesterday? Did I see something? Someone?
It was Understanding the Teenage Brain was last night. It was last night? Oh, never mind. But did you go on the counselor's webpage? They're putting it on the New Canaan Cares website. Go on the New, so you can still watch it on the Cares website.
Thank you, everyone.